Hello, ako si Rambo Talabong at nanonood na naman kayo ng isang episode ng Rappler Talk kung saan kumakausap tayo ng mga taong mahalaga para sa mga kwento na nangyayari dito sa Pilipinas at saka sa buong mundo. For this episode, we'll be speaking with Billie Dumaliang, Managing Trustee at saka Advocacy Officer ng Masungi Geo Research. Just recently, may nangyaring pag-atake sa kanilang mga rangers at saka nanganib ang kanilang buhay at saka kailangan natin malaman na ang pangyayaring ito ay hindi isolated incident. Maraming acts of violence na rin at saka threats na nangyayari sa ating mga sa ating kalikasan at ng mga taong pumuprotekta dito. Para kausapin natin today si Billie, kasama natin siya ngayon sa live natin. Hi Billie.
Hello Rambo.
Okay.
Salamat sa pag-imbita.
Salamat sa pagbigay ng oras din sa amin. At saka sa ating mga manonood, kung meron kayong tanong man sa amin ni Billie, if you have any questions, English, Filipino, this Rappler Talk is a free-flowing discussion. Bato nyo lang sa aming comment section. Ipapasa sa amin ang mga producers at saka social media producers. At subukan namin sagutin ni Billie yan. Okay. Billie, simulan natin yung Masungi Geo Research. Kwento mo sa amin kung paano ito nagsimula at ano na ito ngayon.
Actually, nagsimula siguro yung storya ng Masungi 60 million years ago dahil ito yung mga limestone formations na nanggaling sa ilalim ng ating karagatan. So umangat ito dahil sa paggalaw ng mga tectonic plates at doon nga natin makikita ngayon yung isang malaking spine ng limestone. Ito yung pinakamalaki sa Pilipinas na kitang-kita mula sa particular na edad na tinatawag na Paleocene age, right after the extinction of the dinosaurs. So it's a very significant place, geologically speaking. And in the 1990s, unfortunately, this area became really devastated by all these illegal activities, yung illegal logging that was very prevalent in those times. Quarrying, dahil nga ito yung mga ingredients for cement and construction. Meron ding illegal occupation, yung malalaking land grabbing na nangyari noong mga panahong yun. So thankfully, yung area na yon ay naging parte ng isang joint venture project between the government and the private sector. Kaya kahit papaano ay napigilan yung pagdami pa ng mga illegal activities nito. So it took, I think, about more than 20 years for the forest to regrow and for it to reheal itself with a little help from the humans. So ngayon, meron na itong more than 400 na buhay ilang at species na na-document natin. Yung forest nakabalik na kahit papaano, hindi pa sila sobrang laki, pero 20-year-old trees nandoon na rin. And napakaganda na ito tingnan at nabibisita na ito ng maraming Pilipino. So in 2017 naman, pumunta yung DNR secretary nung panahong yon dun sa area and she tapped our group to help restore surrounding degraded lands noong limestone formations. At dito nga tayo nakaka-experience in the past few years ng napakaraming illegal activities.
So, Billie, first of all, I want to congratulate your efforts sa pag-restore dito sa Masungi kasi I mean, before this interview at saka before the pandemic, talagang ang dami pumupunta sa Masungi, di ba? At saka talagang sikat siya. Kitang-kita pati yung parang yung suspended web, sikat talaga siya. Marami spot siya. So, it's really popular. Pero at the same time, di ba, kailangan rin nating i-confront yung katotohanan na patuloy pa rin yung threats dito sa Masungi. Kahit na malapit sa Maynila, kahit na sikat siya, nakakatanggap pa rin siya ng threats. Kamusta ngayon yung mga threats na natatanggap ng Masungi? Hindi lang sa mga sa kalikasan, kundi sa mga tao nyo na pinoprotektahan ito.
Yun nga, recently we had probably the most serious and devastating incident that we've had against yung ating mga heroes ng ating kagubatan. 2 of our forest rangers recently got shot by who we think are disgruntled violators inside the watershed where our reforestation sites are. So napansin natin nitong pandemya, talagang dumami, nag-accelerate yung mga illegal activities. In fact, as early as March 2020, yung big incident noon was a quarry company fencing the reforestation site. So imagine, our park rangers are working, cleaning the area, preparing it for planting or nurturing, and then suddenly a private entity, barricades it for destructive activity. So, yun, after that, nagsunod-sunod pa yung encroachments na nangyayari sa ating watershed. For example, in July 2020, isang group naman of alleged fraternity, 30 people, pupunta na lang basta-basta sa watershed without any documents at all. And, you know, claiming it, building structures, ganun ka-brazen at ganun kalala ganun katapang yung mga encroachers na ito. And then, no October 2020, meron ulit, there was a former police general who was claiming more than 300 hectares in the watershed and then installed a security agency there without, again, any documents. So, grabe, di ba? I mean, can you imagine how that could possibly happen in a protected area?
Exactly. And there's a mix of motivations here. Parang gusto lang nilang kunin yung land, meron din parang resources, meron din parang, parang may fraternity. Ano yung common, I mean, we touched on this, but ano yung kanilang incentive for doing this? Bakit nila ito ginagawa? Meron ba silang habon na resources sa Masungi? Meron bang natatagong ginto dyan? Kaya gusto nilang pumunta dyan? Ano yung pakay nila dyan? Banat?
Like you said, iba-iba, but it all comes down to money, diba? Profit. So, for example, quarry, they get the mineral resources, the limestone itself. They want to quarry that, or the soil. For businessmen, business entities, they want to build different types of projects there. For yung iba naman, resort, mga unsustainable tourism activities without any kind of authority. So iba-iba yung motivation, but all of them, of course, have, you know, money and personal interest at the front.
At Billie, could you explain to us in just brief terms, pero para klaro rin, ano ba yung protections that are afforded for Masungi? Ano ba yung dapat laban dito? Kasi hindi rin nila alam minsan, di ba, na parang ano bang conservation area?
Yeah. Actually, in the reforestation site, and maybe I will start with that, kasi that one is a legislated protected area. Ito yung tinatawag nating Upper Marikina River Basin Protected Landscape. And in fact, since 1904, US colonial government pa lang, ni-reserve na siya against exploitative activities. Because ever since then, they already knew how important this was to Metro Manila and to Rizal. So sinabi ng mga Amerikano dun pa lang na, you know, you have to keep this as a reservation. It's the Marikina Reservation. That's 1904. Pinagtibay ito nung declaration ng protected landscape noong 2011 after Ondoy, na nakita ng lahat ng Pilipino kung ano yung mangyayari sa atin kung hindi natin alagaan yung kalikasan, which is yung dilubyo at pagbabaha, mga landslides at iba pang pinsala sa atin. So 2011, it's a protected area, which means by law, it should be protected. Dapat wala, in fact, technically speaking, on the strictest sense, dapat walang activity inside. No entry, no settlement, no sale, no construction, no poaching, no anything, because those are sensitive areas ecologically. Yung mga hayop at halaman doon, yung geology niya, yung soil niya, sensitive, na pag tinouch mo yun, pwedeng may epekto sa mga taong nakapaligid rito. So, in the strictest sense, and essentially, yun ang purpose ng isang protected area, na ito ay protected by law from different human and destructive activities. So aside from that law, in particular sa Masungi area, in 1993, Dr. Angel Alcala, who was also a national scientist and DNR secretary, he was one of the first to recognize the ecological importance of Masungi and the karst ecosystem. So meron siyang ginawang Department Administrative Order 1993-33, where he made the Masungi Strict Nature Reserve and Wildlife Sanctuary and banned quarrying in particular, aside from other activities. So yun yung three main protections dito sa area na ginagalawan namin.
So, bawal mag-quarry, bawal yung mga ginagawa essentially yung mga taong ating nado-document na ginagawa nila dyan.
Yes.
Siyempre, pumatang din yung ating mga manonood ngayon. Ano yung ginagawa ng Masungi Geo-Reserve? Ano yung tourist attraction dito? Bakit sila nakakapunta doon at nakakapagpa-photo ops? Hindi ba to harmful? Paano yung ginawa itong project na to?
Right. So, Actually, different yung character ng Masungi Geo Reserve, which is yung sinasabi mo ng maraming bisita at may sapot. Different siya dito sa reforestation site. So, yung Geo Reserve, nandun mismo yung limestone, tsaka yung mga nabibisita ng mga tao. Whereas yung reforestation site is puro grassland. So, this is a new project area that we're working with, where we're seeing and encountering a lot of new but familiar illegal activities. So, medyo iba yung character nila. But in a sense, what we want to happen is sa isang protected area, sa isang conserved area, you have zoning. So dapat alam mo where to have very strict activities, walang kahit ano, walang gagalaw. Meron ding area na pwedeng merong activity pero very much and highly controlled. That's why even in Masungi, maraming nagagalit dahil very strict, bawal sumigaw, bawal maraming tao, konti lang yung pwedeng pumasok. So, merong plan and merong zoning na dapat ginagawa sa loob ng sensitive areas.
Billie, balikan ko yung peligro nangyayari ngayon sa pandemya. Bakit kaya biglang dumami yung incidents? Bakit were they emboldened? Mas lax ba ngayon ng law enforcement natin? Kaya mas maraming ganitong pangyayari? Ano yung basa niyo dito?
Yeah, basa namin, and based sa experience ng iba naming mga kakilala abroad, internationally, talagang tumaas yung illegal activities sa protected areas. Invasions pa nga ang tawag nila sa Cambodia talaga, and Cambodia, Indonesia, Africa, maraming invasions na nangyayari. And particularly nga, dahil naka-focus yung tao, yung enforcement, naka-focus dito sa pag-handle ng pandemya. But I'd have to say na even before the pandemic, malala na yung situation din, and mayroon tayong mga gaps talaga sa enforcement natin of environmental laws.
At saka kasi di ba isa rin sa mga dahilan kung bakit mas kaunti rin. Kasi alam ng mga tao merong protected area dyan, nakakabisita sila. Ngayon bang pandemya, bumaba rin yung inyong visits from tourists. Kasi
Right.
talaga yung di ba, yung pagpunta ng mga turista sa site.
You're right, Rambo. Like, beyond even the funding and sustaining the conservation efforts, why we need sustainable tourism or visits is because they help us build a community that will protect the area, Masungi, from these harmful interests. So imagine yung threats namin, because we are near Metro Manila. Palapit ng palapit, nakikita namin lagi, 1 week may ganito ng development na palapit. So very important na people experience it themselves and know it intimately for them to even start to think about and care about sanctuary like this. So yes, last year, I think 9 months, most of the year, walang bisita. And so we focused our efforts talaga on either community partnerships or the reforestation activities.
And with that less presence from the community, from the people who are usually there, who visit you, how are you fighting back? Mostly legal battle ba to? And nakikita ko sa Facebook page niya, dami niyang pinopost, lagi kayo nagpo-post kung may nangyayari.
Yes.
How are you fighting?
Battle every day. So we're battleground. When we hire our team, sinasabi talaga namin, are you ready to be in the battleship? Because we're fighting different things on multiple fronts. So meron legally, meron on the ground, which is the worst case, meron ding cyber, merong disinformation. So, in almost every front, because we have spoken very vocally about these activities, and we will continue to no matter what, we have been the subject of retaliations from a lot of these entities and personalities. So that's really a risk with the kind of work that we do.
And Billie, after the incident on Sunday, I'm not going to ask about the investigation, but how has this affected the morale of your people, the morale of your leadership, of the people who are fighting with you for the protection of Masungi?
Yes, that's why, our first priority is really yung recovery ng ating rangers na nasaktan. And then second is affording protection for everyone else who is there. Kasi meron kaming team members who are staying on the field. They're still fighting Okay, so hindi namin iiwan yung area na yon as much as we can because that's exactly what the perpetrators wanted, and we cannot give that to them. That's why we've been appealing to the government to provide immediate security assistance to that site, because imagine if, if we continue to lose people, the government will lose that area back to the violators. So it's really important na sana mangyari yung announcement ni ni Chief PNP Eleazar. I saw that he put out a statement that he will provide protection, and we hope to really have that finally. And we're still waiting for that on the ground.
Okay, so you're seeking help from the police. Actually, may tanong from one of our viewers now from Perk Bautista. I'm reading it. I've been to Masungi and it's beautiful. What support do you get from the LGU regarding encroaching? And tuhugin ko na rin, from the national government aside from the PNP. So local government and national government,
Right.
what help do you need?
Well, the protocol naman is that, in these violations that we have, we really write to them, provide the incident reports, and, ask them to step in and enforce the law. Because as much as we try to do what we can, like we have rangers, we put checkpoints, we have monitoring devices and cameras. Syempre, yung mandate and yung capacity is still with our government. And that's under the law and that's under the partnership. So we really want them to step in. So right now, siguro ang isang improvement na kailangan with enforcement all over the Philippines is really tracking, all of these violations that are reported and making sure that the reports turn into convictions. Because I guess one of the problems are that these violators don't feel like they will get punished for what they're doing. So kailangan nating magawa yun, na merong monitoring kung ano nang nangyari dito. Na napunta ba sa conviction yung wildlife crime or environmental crime ito. Kasi sadly, madalas, tingin sa environmental crime is secondary crime.
Exactly. Mamaya, tatanong kita tungkol dyan kasi parang konti rin yung sympathy ng mga tao sa puno, sa mga ayaw kasi hindi sila tao. Pero ngayon, Billie, sapat ba yung tulong na natatanggap sa local at sa national government? Is it enough?
We need more support from local and national government. We are very thankful nung March 2020, I mentioned about the quarry. It was Secretary Simatu himself who went to the site and announced the cancellation of quarry agreement. So that's a huge thing that hasn't been done before. And we're still waiting for the formal cancellation. So I think, so we still need more. We still need them to sustain yung mga ganong actions. Kailangan masustain, tuloy-tuloy, long-term, and across all levels of government. Hindi lang sa isang tao o sa isang official or isang bureau, di ba? Lahat concerted, sustained, long-term, and sincere.
Okay, and Billie, I don't want to put you on the spot for 2022 elections. Just asking you about broad strokes. Hindi kailangan may advocacy for a certain candidate, but what do you want the government to do now, executive and legislative? So the presidential, the task force, the departments, and also our lawmakers. What can they do, not for Masungi, but for other protected areas in the country?
Implement the law. The law is already there, right? I discussed what is a protected area. Nandun na po eh. So, kailangan natin ng political will para protektahan itong mga sensitive areas natin. Ito ay treasure ng Pilipinas. Sa ating lahat ang mga lugar na ito, kaya kailangan natin siyang protektahan. So, please protect not only these areas, but the people who defend them. So, ang Philippines, lagi tayong 1 or 2 sa global ranking ng most dangerous countries for environment. So, di ba, if we already know who's being targeted, we should give the commensurate amount of protection to them. They deserve that. Habang tayo natutulog, sila natutulog sa kagubatan. Why can't we give them protection kahit mag-deploy ng ng people and security who can help them do their job. And we've seen this in other countries where joint talaga, makikita mo yung pagtutulungan ng private sector, civil society, and security to go and catch wildlife crime, to catch environmental crime. Kailangan hawak kamay at sabay-sabay. Kung hindi, really magkakaroon ng problema, magkakaroon ng violence. So I think that's the executive. All I can say is implement the law, right? Use what you already have within the law and within your powers, your mandate, to implement and protect these areas. Sa legislative naman, ako personally, I would like to see incentives given to the private sector and to civil society organizations to do this work because we have over 200 protected areas. We already know, and I think everybody knows naman, even the DNR knows, na mahirap talaga. The ratio of rangers in the Philippines is one ranger is to about 4,000 hectares of protected area. So merong kakulangan tayo sa resources, and there's an 80% gap in funding versus our biodiversity conservation targets and needs. So kailangan natin ng legislative measures to be able to incentivize other sectors, bring them in so that they can help. But they can't help if hindi sila ma-provide ng mga things like security, which only the state can provide. Or hindi sila ma-provide ng things like, helping with enforcement and, things that they can't do on their own. So let's incentivize them. And this has worked in other countries. Example, South Africa. Most of their protected areas and parks are managed not by, the government, but in partnership with other sectors. So tingin ko that's a good way forward na kailangan nating ma-explore if we are really to save our protected areas at scale.
So ang dami mo na nabanggit, Billie. Ayos yun. Sana yung mga lawmakers and our politicians now, bato-bato sa langit din, sana siguro magkaroon ng dito session on how the laws are being enforced outside of the government naman, private sector, of course. It's not just the private sector as a whole, but yung big businesses. What is their role?
Yeah, I actually think businesses can be given that job to protect, to be honest, protect on the ground. We've seen that happen in Patagonia, diba? They have this shirt in South America, yung Patagonia t-shirt brand. That's a big business, but they gave all their profits to buying land in South America, buying threatened land, and converting it to parks, and then donating it to government when the management is already there, right? So may mga ganong innovative models for the private sector na tingin ko we can hugely benefit from. In the past, they have helped a lot by giving money. So nung nangyari yung Undoy, ang daming private sector companies that contributed CSR funds. The problem with that was, according to my consultations with the people who were involved, the problem was that hindi na sustain masyado. So after like 3 years, 5 years of that funding, mawala na rin. So yung mga tanim na puno doon, who's taking care of them? And then you have the illegal activity. So wala rin, 'di ba? No, negative yung impact. So it has to be a sustainable and long-term initiative. Any conservation initiative should be long-term, especially in landscape scale conservation.
So hindi dapat parachute lang na pupunta sila magtatanim tapos saan sila.
Yeah. Okay. Siyempre, all of us have different roles, di ba? Not everyone has the capacity to do that. But in terms of at scale, di ba, let's help those organizations who have that capacity to implement those programs.
Tama. And Billie, itong inyong karanasan ngayon, siyempre, marami nagulat doon sa act of violence noong Sunday midnight na pinost mo. But I guess for me, it was really shocking kasi Masungi is really popular. At least in the end. And even the province, alam kong dinadayo kayo dyan. What does that say about our state of conservation here in the Philippines na merong ganyan act of violence amid the pandemic? And even despite the popularity of Masungi, bakit nangyayari kaya ito?
Yeah, so It means that there's a lot to improve on. We have a lot to improve on. Like you said, we already have a name. People kind of know about Masungi kahit papaano. We are the closest to Metro Manila, or one of the closest parks to Metro Manila. This protected area, the larger protected area that we are part of, has the most stakeholders, probably has the most stakeholders in the entire country, which probably makes it the most critical protected area to protect. So the question is, if ganito yung state ng Masungi and the areas around it, paano na lang yung iba pa, 'di ba? Na malayo, na walang nakatindig na ibang group or people who are fighting for it, and yung wala pang masyadong nakakakilala. So what's happening there, 'di ba? I think we can only imagine kung anong nangyayari sa ibang mga protected areas na yan. We have over 200 of them.
Nakakita rin talaga tayo maraming reports, and nabanggit mo rin kanina na the Philippines is really a dangerous place for environmental defenders, and that was not pulled out of thin air. Talagang may mga pinapatay sa atin, di ba? Ngayon,
Yes.
ano rin, isa rin kasi I guess an issue when we talk about, environmental conservation, nature, is it's not always on top of the priority. Of course, climate change, hindi din yung itaas sa pakialam ng mga tao, kasi sinasabi nila parang immediately sa atin, wala naman tayo masyadong iniisip siya, hindi naman sila para sa'yo, how would you convince people to care more about trees, about nature, when they're busy, for example, feeding themselves, they try to be in communities that are safer? Why should they care about the environment?
Well, they should care about the environment because it's our home. It's everyone's home. So katulad ng pagpasok mo sa sarili mong bahay, kung sira-sira ito, wala kang protection laban sa iba-ibang mga masasamang pwedeng mangyari. So the same with our environment, no? And tama ka, the ordinary people, baka hindi nila masyadong ma-recognize yon. But yun nga yung sabi ko kanina, honestly, we can say all these facts and information, pero kung hindi nila ma-experience yung nature, to go out in nature and to see its beauty and magnificence and all, yung ganun palang inherent na character of nature, then it will really be hard for them to figure it out. But in fact, that's a challenge really for environmental and scientific communications, diba? But I'm not hopeless, because I've seen there was a time na yung climate change was just a very niche topic. Konti lang yung nag-uusap about it, and in the global scale, nahirapan sila to push it. But now, sobrang laki ng change, diba? It's at least on the global sphere, it's on the top of the environment agenda, or even in the general agenda of the UN, for example. So I'm not hopeless that we will not be able to get there. So twin subjects yan yung climate change, but there's also biodiversity conservation. And that's why at Masungi, we try to, remind people of the beauty of nature, yung memory nila of nature. So nagpo-post kami lagi ng iba-ibang hayop, halaman, mga kakaiba at interesting, para mabuhay yung pagkakakilala natin sa nature. Of course, beyond pa yan nung functional na role of nature in our daily lives. Again, the degradation of the Upper Marikina watershed was a factor in the devastating floods nung Ondoy and even nung Ulysses. So kailangan talaga natin pagtuunan ng pansin dahil nakasalalay yung buhay natin dito. And if you look at the math, diba, if you do green infrastructure, and not just gray infrastructure, you'll be able to save a lot of money from disasters later. So there's also economic sense that you should study. In fact, if you look at other countries, nature is an investment, it's not a liability. So kailangan mag-iba yung mindset natin na yung pangangalaga sa kalikasan, pangangalaga sa mga tagapagtanggol ng kalikasan, ay hindi isang liability, hindi siya gastos lang. May balik ito sa ating lahat, sa ating lipunan, sa ating ekonomiya. So ito pa yung isa na pinupush ng mga environmentalists to actually account for the ecosystem services that these protected areas provide.
for that, Billy. And let's go back to the community to end this conversation. And thank you for your enthusiasm and for your courage and for your hope in fighting for the environment. My last question is for Filipinos who want to help out Masungi and for Filipinos who want to do more for the nature, for the environment, what advice would you tell them?
Yeah, I think for us, no, we have very specific help needed at any point of the year. We are very transparent on social media of what we're going through. So my first request is for you to follow us and see at any point in time what help we need. Right now, we need security support and assistance. So if you can help us convince our leaders to do that, we will be very grateful, and our family, our team will be very grateful. And please continue to follow these groups, not just Masungi, but all the other groups that are fighting, risking their lives, trying to protect the environment, which protects everyone else. So bigyan natin sila ng pansin, bigyan natin sila ng pagkakataon, and I'm sure you'll find your own meaning in the environment movement.
Billie Dumaliang of the Masungi GRE Reserve Advocacy Officer and Managing Trustee. Maraming salamat sa pagsama sa amin. Thank you, Billie.
Thank you, Rambo and Rappler.
Our viewers, thank you for watching us. If you want to follow this issue, developments, we'll continue to follow this, and we also comprehensively cover the environment. This is an issue we care about. Continue to watch this and follow us. Thank you so much.